This is George Anderson, broadcasting from a nondescript snowy location somewhere in central Utah today. I apologize, I'm not a professional photographer and I couldn't get, we had a nice snow last night, and so the glare coming in from the window, if I close the drapes it's too dark, if I open them it's too light, so you just kind of bear with me a little bit. But I wanted to talk again today about another practical application of seller financing and some of the techniques that we've mentioned previously, and this is maybe a new little twist in case you know anybody that's ever been through a divorce situation. So let me just explain a little bit why I talk about these seller finance transactions, and I'm a lender, I'm not a real estate agent. The reason is because there's nothing in the underwriting guidelines that says that if a person has had a bankruptcy and a foreclosure and they're self-employed and they don't have all their immigration papers and blah, 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 blah. There's nothing in there that says that someone under these circumstances will never qualify for a loan. There's always a time frame. So the lender's responsibility is to figure out what is a reasonable expectation on that time frame, and then consult with the buyer and consult with, in this case we have an investor involved, on how much time they need. And how to structure it so that everybody gets what they want. So anyway, so this woman who had been referred by her attorney had over $100,000 of joint debts with her ex-husband, and that was after having sold a marital property where her share was almost $100,000 of cash. Well, guess what? The ex-husband was not paying his bills, even though he was told to, and he was legally obligated to pay those bills per the divorce decree. Well, there was a lot of debt here now that was going into 30, 60, and it wasn't long before this was going to be a ticking time bomb once they hit 90 days late, because then those creditors are going to come after the woman, and they don't care. The divorce decree is a meaningless piece of paper to a creditor. There's no protection provided by that. Sure, there's some legal remedies and stuff that the attorney can do, but at the end of the day, the creditors have a claim on that, and they're going to come after and do what they can. So the attorney was suggesting that, could we get her and put a good chunk of that money into a seller finance transaction, and then I can deal with the creditors, and if that means bankruptcy, whatever it was, that would be his prerogative to figure out the best way to do that. I'm not an attorney, I'm not going to give legal advice, but this was a situation that I thought was worth taking a look at, because there was somebody coming in here that was going to be ultimately putting down 20% or maybe even a little bit more on a property that she's eventually going to be able to qualify for. Well, I figured out that under the worst case scenario, that would maybe mean 2 to 3 years from now. So I looked at her situation, and prior to the divorce, there was a good credit history there. There was an employment history. There was income coming in right now, and she could qualify for a modest property, and actually qualified for more than what she wanted to buy. And I said, this is great. Why don't you go find a place that you want to buy, and I'll find an investor that wants to put in the permanent financing for you, and then you guys can structure a seller finance transaction. And that's exactly what she did. So she found a place that was close to work, close to kids. It was within her budget, and the investor said, great. So that home was put under contract by the investor. They put down 25%. Did a non-owner occupied, regular conventional 30-year fixed rate loan where we knew that that payment was going to stay nice and low and level and predictable over the years. The woman came in and put down, roughly 20% on a price that was 10% more than what the investor paid for it. And you might say, well, why would she want to do that? Well, that same home, to be able to buy that home over the next 5 years and to only pay a 10% premium, or $275 in this case, well, that home just 3 years ago was only selling for $210. So the rate of appreciation over 3 years was much, much greater than the rate that the investor was willing to lock in for her. So she knew that her payment was locked in, she knew that her purchase price was locked in, and she had a minimum of at least 2 years of time beyond the worst case scenario, what she would need to get on her feet and deal with all these creditors that were going to be coming after her shortly. So that's what we did. And so you have a seller out there that sold their home and got the list price of what they were asking for their home. The investor picked up a rental property with a great tenant in there, but the tenant also has an ownership interest in that house that's locked in, and it meets her needs until the time when she can get her permanent financing in place. And the great thing about this is that, you know, the investor is not dealing with somebody that has a renter's mentality, somebody who's gonna come in there with, you know, a deposit, maybe wondering if, you know, barely making their rent on time, trashing the place, bringing in animals, you know, whatever they wanna do and stuff like that, and then leaving the renter or the landlord with a place that's trashed. No, the landlord knows that this person has skin in the game, quite a bit of skin, and it's a home that they intend to buy. So this is a great scenario that maybe you can start looking through, who do you know that's going through a divorce, been through a divorce, maybe has a bankruptcy situation. They can afford the payment to have a roof over their head. They have the cash to be able to put down, but right now, under the underwriting guidelines, they don't fit into the box. Well, let's find a way to put people together, somebody who's can benefit from that situation. There's investors out there that would love to have a tenant situation like that, and that's what the seller finance transaction is all about, is finding the needs of a buyer and a seller, putting the people together, and making a win-win scenario for everybody. So thanks for coming and visiting the Credit Jungle. This is George Anderson. Stay tuned, because we're going to continue to roll out more and more scenarios that everybody can recognize, and everybody knows somebody in these situations. So thank you again for tuning in.